So today we're talking about special occasion speaking. And special occasion speaking is one of the most popular forms, the most ubiquitous forms of public speaking because it depends on the occasion. There are many different ways and many different scenarios in which you engage in special occasion speaking. It's also called celebratory speaking because the nature of special occasion or celebratory speaking is that when it comes to special occasion speaking, it's related to the special occasion that's happening. Celebratory, it's kind of the same thing. They are synonymous with each other. Celebratory speaking, at the root of it is celebrating something. So even something as a eulogy is celebrating the life of whomever, or the ending of whoever it is that's happening. So we're going to talk about different types of special occasion speaking. I'm going to talk about what the purpose is, how to interact with it, because different special occasion speeches, you interact with it in a different way depending on the scenario, and what the background is. So for the most part, special occasion speaking, you will engage with it depending on the scenario that you're in. So you will be invited to speak or asked to speak, and most of the time you'll know beforehand whether you're speaking. And special occasion speaking can be persuasive, it can be informative, it can be neither. So it's not necessarily persuasive or informative. So if you were to think of something like a toast, you're not going to be trying to persuade someone to act in a different way necessarily. Whereas in an after-dinner speech, an after-dinner speech is inherently persuasive. So depending on the style, depending on the reason for you engaging with that special occasion speech, you will interact with information, persuasion in a different way. And the length of special occasion speeches depends mostly on the occasion. A toast isn't going to be much longer than 5 minutes, whereas a eulogy could be 15 minutes. A commencement speech could be 45 minutes. An inaugural address, such as William Henry Harrison's, his was 2 hours. So it depends on the special occasion that you're in. It depends on the scenario. Audience analysis really matters here. Knowing why it is that you are speaking, why you are asked to speak, what it is that you hope to accomplish in this, what your audience expects from you. It's vitally important to understand what it is that's going on. So we're going to talk about several different types of special occasion speaking. We have 14 here. Just a brief overview of them all. It's good to be aware of those. Talking about some of the most popular, and then moving towards some of the least popular. So one of the most popular special occasion speeches is the toast. This is the one that you hear at weddings or at celebrations, toasting, celebrating whatever it is that's going on. And usually someone who is close to whatever it is that's being, or whomever it is that's being toasted, is asked to speak. So at a wedding, it's going to be the maid of honor, or the best man, or potentially a parent, or the religious leader, or community leader, whatever it might be. And the purpose of a toast is really to celebrate. It's really to bring the community together. And the person presenting the toast usually goes in a couple of ways. They usually start with a story about what it is that, who it is that they're doing, providing some background. They have to have some reason for being there too. It can't just be somebody who met the couple once on Twitter and is now toasting the happy couple at their wedding. There has to be some reason for them to be there. So an example would be like my brother's toast. So I'm his twin brother. It's awesome. It's built in. You automatically have a best man at your wedding. And I was the best man at his wedding. And so my toast wasn't very long, but I did focus on my history with my brother. And I'm 1 minute older than he is. And so I started my toast with, I'm 1 minute older than my brother. And I've always told him throughout life, because he would always ask me as his big brother, I would need to know how to help him. And so I would always say, when you get to be my age, you'll understand how the world works. And I moved to talk about, he's been in a relationship for the last 6 years with his now wife. And he's really shown me, the tables have kind of turned. He's really shown me how to have a successful relationship through the joyful times and, of course, the troubled times. He's shown me how to succeed in this relationship. And I look forward to the love that these two will share for the rest of their lives. And so I was able to share that story briefly. I was able to make that connection. Usually toast has some sort of connection. Usually it's funny. Doesn't have to be. The important part with any special occasion speech is don't push yourself out of something you're not familiar with, especially when it comes to comedy. If you're not comfortable being funny, don't be funny. It's going to be much more awkward for a joke to fall flat because you pushed it than to not to. It's much easier to stay with your strengths. If you're not someone who's comfortable being funny up in front of a room, it's fine. If you are, great. Don't push yourself out of your comfort zone. And there are ways to engage with the toast. So with the toast, there are a couple of things that the speaker needs to do and that the audience needs to do, because an audience is just as important, and knowing how to react to the toast is important as well. So for the speaker, usually it ends with, let's all raise a glass, or let's all toast the happy couple at the event, or whatever it's going on. And then they'll raise their glass, and the audience needs to react. So when the speaker asks to raise their glass, typically the audience will react by raising a glass in toast to whatever that's going on. The toaster might add another sentence or two, specifically toasting what's going on, and then take a drink. That taking a drink signifies acceptance. So if you take a drink, or a fake take a drink, or whatever it is, then you're signifying you accept the toast and what's going on. And most people do. But if you actively don't take a drink, that's showing that you disagree with it. And that's fine if you disagree with it. But if you just don't care, then maybe just taking that drink will be better. Because if you're not taking that drink, you're actively not agreeing with what's going on. So you want to recognize that when you are taking a drink. It's okay to disagree, but just be ready to, if you disagree, there better be a good reason. If you're at a wedding with a couple that you disagree with being together, maybe you shouldn't have gone to that wedding to begin with. So that's a toast. The next most popular one, and popular is in like the most popularly used, not necessarily the one that most people attend, is a eulogy. So a eulogy is a celebration of usually a person's life, but it's the ending of something. The ending of an event is the ending of a person's life, whatever it might be. And usually a eulogy kind of follows a similar genre. So it usually talks about what that person has done. And I'm sticking specifically to funerals here. What that person has done, what they've accomplished, what their impact is on life. Because one of the things, especially in our American perspective on death, is that there needs to be meaning. There needs to be something that comes out of it. Someone just can't die. Regardless of your religious or social affiliation, there needs to be, there's an expectation that there being meaning. Similarly to the toast, the person who's presenting the eulogy needs to be connected to the person in some way. So whether it's a religious leader, a community leader, or whether it's a friend or a relative, whatever it might be, there's that connection. So eulogy, similarly, is kind of a similar ending as well. So the eulogy, the person might ask for, let's all bow our heads in silence for a moment of prayer, or let's all bow our heads in silence. And the audience engages with that as well. They bow their head for a moment of silence, and the person will walk off. There's usually not applause. It's just not quite the right scenario for that. Now, just because a eulogy typically happens in a funeral doesn't mean that a eulogy is always sad. My grandfather's funeral was one of the funniest events I've ever been to, because my grandfather was just kind of a weird dude. He would give you the shirt off his back. He would give you the money that you needed, but he would razz you for it the entire time. He would never let you forget that you took the shirt off his back. He was a snarky, sarcastic, salty SOB, and he had just an impact on everybody's life, and whether it was positive or joking or whatever. He was the mechanic, he was the milkman, he was a truck driver, he was a bus driver. He did a lot of things to engage with his community, and a lot of people knew him and interacted with him. And so we would recount a lot of the stories about him, how they impacted our lives. And it was just a funny event. And so even though we were crying because we were sad that he was gone, we were also laughing and engaging with that eulogy. So there's, just like there are going to be a lot of links, there's a link to an example of a eulogy, the Bernie Mac eulogy that Steve Harvey presented at Bernie Mac's funeral. That's an example of one where he uses humor to engage with the funeral and the event. The next one here is an awards acceptance. So an awards acceptance is just as it sounds, you're accepting an award. An award could be a physical award, such as a certificate or a trophy, or it could be a designation, it could be a Medal of Honor, whatever it might be. It could be a scholarship or a grant. But awards acceptance generally does the same thing throughout the different scenarios here. So generally you go up, you thank the people that brought you there. Now, when it comes to like Golden Globes and Tonys and things like that, you hear that music after a few minutes because people are trying to thank everyone they've ever met. You don't want to do that. I think key people, it's better to provide a general thank you to people rather than try and name everybody and then end up inevitably forgetting someone's name. But you do want to thank the committee or the organization that gave you that award. You want to talk about what that award means. So why it is that it matters. So it's not just this thing that someone gave you because they saw you walking down the street. It really has some significance in talking about how you will engage with that award, why you're humble as well. You want to recognize, you don't want to come up and say, I'm the greatest, therefore I deserve this award. You want to talk about what's an honor to receive this award, even though you might actually think that you're the greatest, and that's fine. You want to present that as if you're humble and that you are worthy of this award because it means so much. Talking about the history of the award, talking about whatever it might be. And then you end with a thank you, or this is an example where you might say thank you at the end of the speech. You're ending with an appreciation of receiving that award, and then the audience will applaud at the end of that speech. Next one here is an introduction. So typically you might hear this with an introduction to another speaker or to an event, and it does some similar things here. So an introduction really provides the preface to what it is that's going on. So an introduction to something, whether it's introducing an award for a person or introducing a person, you highlight why that person is credible to receive that award or to speak or to do whatever it is that they are doing. Highlight some of their the events that the things that they've accomplished in life, who they are as a person, why they're there at that event, and some of the things that you're doing in that introduction. And similarly with that one, the speaker will typically say, please help me welcome whomever or whatever it is, and the audience will applaud there. Next one here is probably the most fun. This is a roast. A roast is an interesting dynamic. Roasts have been around for a long time. The Dean Martin roast is some of the most popular ones, but then Comedy Central really brought them back with the roasts of Joan Rivers and David Hasselhoff, Jeff Foxworthy, Larry the Cable Guy, some of those roasts there. And the purpose of a roast is to engage in some good-natured ribbing. Now, with the Comedy Central roast, they kind of go on a more extreme level, especially with some of the ones who are really good at roasting, such as Jeffrey Ross, Greg Giraldo, and Lisa Lampanelli, Whitney Cummings, Amy Schumer, those ones who are really dive in. But once again, there needs to be a reason why you're there. You're connecting with that person, you're respectful of that person, you're engaged with them, having some good-natured fun. With the roast, the example that I have in the description here is of Bob Newhart roasting Don Rickles. Don Rickles is one of the most famous roasters of all time. He's an insult comic, really became popular after he learned that his snarky comebacks to hecklers was actually better than his original material. And so Bob Newhart, who doesn't really engage with mean humor, is able to get on Don Rickles because they're really good friends. So that's a good example of a roast there. If you want to watch more intense roasts, I encourage you to watch Greg Giraldo. Very strong language, so don't watch that if you don't feel comfortable with that. But Greg Giraldo is one of the top roasters of all time. So once again, the purpose is to have fun with the person that you're roasting. While you might be making fun of them and making fun of what it is, everybody knows that you're just having fun. And even though, like Greg Giraldo, he may not have personally known Joan Rivers or personally known Jeff Foxworthy, he does engage with them in a different way. And so having that good nature. And what's important for the audience is to engage in that laughter. And it's an opportunity to laugh, opportunity to have fun. Only people who have done something get roasted and have their weaknesses applied or identified as foibles, as something funny to make fun of. So being able to engage with that, the audience engages by laughing. Now, of course, if it's not funny, don't laugh. But that's the purpose there. And then the speaker at the end of the roast, after they've roasted whoever it is on the dais usually, and then people, the roaster in person, they say it's been a real honor, it's a real appreciation. I'm honored to have been invited to roast you. It really means something. You end with a good-natured note of thanks and gratitude because it's an honor to roast someone. You recognize as someone who can say something and has something funny to say while still being respectful. The next one here is the commencement speech. The commencement speech is one you'll see hopefully when you graduate, and then other events where you're providing this message. The speaker is providing a message moving forward from here. So it's wrapping up whatever's happening. So that valedictorian speech is similar to a commencement speech. You're summarizing what has happened in your lives and recognizing that we're moving on from here. There's a change in life. In college events or high school graduation, there's a change. You're moving away from people or events you might have known and providing hope for the future. So celebrities will come in and be commencement speakers, leaders in the community might be. And so the audience engages in a similar way. Now, commencement speeches tend to be longer than they really need to be. So if you're presenting a commencement speech, it's better to be shorter than longer, because if you've been in a high school graduation or when you go to a college graduation, it's exhausting sitting there for a long time. And so while a commencement speaker might have something wonderful to say for 45 minutes, it might take a bit too long. So if you're going to be speaking, make sure that every word is absolutely vital, because the people that you're listening to, you already have not necessarily a hostile audience, but an audience who is ready to go, whose audience is ready to go party or ready to go celebrate with their family and friends or whatever it might be. The audience engages by being receptive, by applauding toward at the end, listening effectively. The commencement speech here, one of the more popular ones, JFK's American University commencement speech, where he talks about what we should do for our government and what government should do for us. The after dinner speech is one that is not as popular anymore. So the after dinner speech is not just a speech presented once everybody's full. It's an after dinner speech where it's usually taking place at an event. So you've had this banquet and someone comes up and speak on a persuasive topic, specifically when it comes to social issues. And so an after dinner speech, the example that I have here is of a professional after dinner speaking competition. And so this person presents it, and usually after dinner speeches are presented in a humorous manner. They're highlighting some issues, they're highlighting some things, presenting a persuasive argument. One of the more popular ones is the keynote or TED Talk. So I put these two together. They have different purposes. So a keynote address usually sets up the conference or the meeting or whatever it is, usually someone who sets up the theme. So an example would be like at the National Communication Association conference happening in November, the theme is communication at the crossroads. And so the keynote address will focus on that theme, 45 minutes, really setting the stage for the conference, really providing what it is that's going on. A TED Talk is an opportunity to provide this 15 or so minute presentation on something. Usually it deals with the theme of whatever the conference is or the TED Talk event is. The example that I have here is Jeff Alt. He's someone who went on the Appalachian Trail through adversity for his brother, engaging in fundraising opportunities, took place in Cincinnati. Just as a hint, you might know who his TED Talk coach might have been. Just a hint, you might know him as your instructor for COM131. So he's a good speaker anyway. He's been presenting the speech for a long time, and it's a good speech. It's a good example of a TED Talk. I'm sure we've engaged with TED Talks before. The example on, for extra credit, Will Stevens, TED Talk is also an example of that. Excuse me. The next one here is a debate. So a debate particularly happens in a formal setting. So we have debates with our friends all the time. We argue back and forth, but a debate in a setting, a more formal setting, provides the opportunity to really learn and engage with finding the best solutions for the problems around us. And we have an example of debates such as presidential debates where it seems like we're always trying to find a winner. And to a certain extent, kind of. Presidential debates, we like to see who's going to have the best opportunity. And the example that I have here is the Nixon-Kennedy television debate. So, and what's interesting about the Nixon-Kennedy television debate is that people who watched this event on television thought that Kennedy won. People who listened to it on the radio thought that Nixon won. And it's all about perception. But I want you to listen to the content of the debate, see how they interact with each other. This was before really, I mean, this was the first televised presidential debate. This was before really whomever was supported that president declared them the winner before the debate even happened. This is before you just argued past each other or talked past each other rather than really engaging with each other. And that's the purpose of a debate. Next one here is a Jeremiad. A Jeremiad, the whole purpose of a Jeremiad is to identify the issues that a certain group is facing. So an example of this might be George Carlin. I did not feel comfortable showing you a George Carlin video, but an example of this is where you're specifically and aggressively highlighting the social ills that a group is engaging in. So something like you have engaged in adultery, you have engaged in sins against God, and then moving toward an opportunity to fix that. So a Jeremiad, it doesn't have to be religiously involved, but a Jeremiad is an opportunity to highlight a community's or a group's or an audience's specific issues, hammer on those issues for the purpose of fixing those issues. It does not have to be religiously involved at all. And an audience is supposed to be offended. They're supposed to be angry. They're supposed to want to do something to change. They want to be angry at the person speaking because they want to change that perception. So that's the purpose of the Jeremiad. A sermon, on the other hand, is always religiously involved. It doesn't matter the religion. It's always religiously involved. It's usually given by a religious leader or a community leader in a religious setting. And so the purpose of a sermon is usually to provide context, moving from a religious text, providing context for the modern world and the community that they're involved in. And so the audience engages with that as well. It depends on the speaker how that presentation is. Typically with some of the major religious groups, Christianity, Islam, Catholicism, Judaism, it's directly tied to the religious text. Other community leaders, other religious leaders, Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, Mormonism, some of those don't necessarily tie in exactly to the religious text. You can tie in with more of those. But the important part here with the sermon is that the speaker is engaging with that text or with that idea to connect to the modern world, how that community will be moving forward. A lecture, you already know the purpose of a lecture. A lecture is a teaching. So this is a lecture, teaching you an idea. Lectures should be focused on just one topic or a set of related topics. This one's talking about special occasion speaking. And so a lecture, if it were to be all over the place, if it were to have no point, then it wouldn't really be effective because the audience needs to learn from that. There needs to be some sort of takeaway message that the audience takes away. And so there are different ways to engage in lecture. I'm a very Socratic type of lecturer. I like to engage with my audience, which is why this is killing me that I have to record this instead of be with you in person. I like to engage with you and be able to interact with you in that way. So, but lectures can take place in many different ways. Lectures can be short, they can be 5 minutes, they can be long, so it's just 3 hours. It depends on the style of the person who is lecturing. The next one here is the rally. So a rally is an opportunity for us to get involved. It's for us to become energized to rally around something. And a typical example of a rally would be like a high school pep rally. So the question that I have for you this week is I want you to describe how, regardless of the type of rally it is, and high school rally is probably gonna be the easiest one to think back to, but it could be a college rally, or it could be a community rally, it could be whatever it might be. How did the speakers at that rally get the audience rallied up? That's what I want you to think about. Choose any rally that you want. How did the speakers, or were you the speaker? How did you get, or how did the speakers get the audience invested in whatever it is of what they were doing? So when you're answering that question, think about who the speakers were, what the event was, why they were speaking, what was the event you were trying to get rallied up for. So was it homecoming or was it some sort of sporting event? Trying to get that rally up there. So the purpose of a rally, the audience is supposed to be invested as well, but it's on the speakers, it's the onus of the speaker to get them involved. They have to become rallied up. You can't just ask the audience to get excited for nothing. So an example I have here, getting involved in this rally, being invested there. And the last one here is the political address. So a political address has many different reasons, and a political address isn't necessarily just related to a presidential address. So the purpose of the address is to engage with the community because especially in America, politics and the social society are supposed to be intertwined, supposed to be connected. It's not supposed to be this disconnect between politics and society and hope that they're working for each other. It's supposed to be connected. So part of what we do, part of why we have the State of the Union address and other sort of events is to really connect with those and to learn from our political leaders. So the purpose of it is to share that information. Now, of course, politicians by nature aren't going to share everything. There's too much going on in the background. But the idea is for them to present the truth as much as they can, and to the audience members, they want the full truth as to what's going on. So making sure to engage with that, and the audience is supposed to invest with it in certain ways. Now, depending on the speaker, such as the president, typically there's more respect shown. Whereas a political leader who's trying to get into a campaign rally, there's not necessarily as much. So the example that I have here is Howard Dean's speech after he placed well in the Democratic caucus in Iowa. And you might be too young to really remember how much of an impact this had, this sound that he made during this speech, how that impacted his debate. I encourage you to read some of the comments at your own, although the comments aren't really that bad, although any YouTube comments is probably going to be a bad one or two. Read the comments, really engage with. I'm not asking for a political position here. I'm not trying to make a connection to any other politicians, but look at how people reacted to this event in the moment as well as now, 16 years later. So those are just some special occasion speeches. It's just some that doesn't cover everything. Any special occasion speech you want to directly tie to what is the occasion of speaking? Why am I speaking? Why am I the person speaking? What am I speaking for? What is my setting? Who is my audience? How can I best adapt my material? Because just like with informative and persuasive speaking, any speech can be the best and any speech can be the worst depending on the scenario. It can be the same exact content and it not work. So make sure you're engaging with that. So make sure to answer that question that I asked a couple of minutes ago about rallies and the discussion board, making sure to finish up your Chapter 13 quiz. Let me know if you have any questions or concerns. I look forward to hearing from you.